Aliens didn't know who'd arrive until the Deathworlders from the galaxy appeared. The Ceruleans, the planet's intelligent inhabitants, moved gracefully along the skywalks and plazas, their translucent wings catching the sunlight as they floated from place to place. The city hummed softly, a gentle symphony of energy flowing through the streets, lighting panels, and aerial transport lanes. Life here was predictable, structured, and orderly. Nothing had disturbed this harmony in centuries. But now, as the suns lowered, a strange anomaly appeared in Zyphora's orbit. A fleet of ships, unlike anything the Ceruleans had ever encountered, glimmered against the fading sky. They were neither sleek nor shiny like the Cerulean craft. Their hulls were scratched and dented in places. They were oddly asymmetrical, with exposed equipment and compartments that looked patched together in a way that made no sense according to Cerulean engineering principles. Despite their rough appearance, the fleet moved with purpose, gliding smoothly through Zyphora's atmosphere toward the city below. The Cerulean Council observed the approaching fleet from their chamber, a circular platform hovering high above the city. Each council member had multiple eyes, scanning the data feeds streaming in from the planet's sensors. The information did not match anything in the ancient Cerulean archives. "Who are they?" one whispered, the tone more curiosity than fear. "We do not know," replied another, a taller figure whose translucent skin shimmered faintly with thought. "But their trajectory is precise. They mean to land, that much is certain." From the observation deck, the aliens watched the first of the human ships descend toward a flat plain outside the city. The ship touched the ground with a mild rumble, sending small clouds of purple dust into the air. The humans began to emerge. At first, the Ceruleans could not even comprehend what they were seeing. They were bipedal, upright beings. Their bodies were muscular, built for strength, endurance, and adaptability. Their skin had variations of color from pale to dark, with hair in every shade of brown, black, red, or gold. They were dressed not in formal uniforms, but in garments that looked rugged and practical. Thick boots, reinforced pants, and jackets with pockets overflowing with tools and devices. Some wore goggles over their eyes, others carried strange, handheld instruments, and all moved with a confidence that was almost reckless in the eyes of the Ceruleans. The humans did not march or line up. They laughed, pointed, and approached the alien terrain as if it were a playground. One human crouched near a spiky purple plant, poking it with a stick. Another carefully collected water from a shallow crater filled with luminescent liquid, examining it with a small device. The Ceruleans observed silently, exchanging glances. They had never seen beings so unafraid, so curious, so alive in the face of the unknown. A human woman stepped forward, raising her hand in what the Ceruleans initially interpreted as a challenge. But then she smiled, a wide, bright smile, and waved again. It was a simple gesture, but it carried a sense of openness and warmth. The Ceruleans, who had long communicated through thought transmissions and gestures more precise than a heartbeat, felt a strange urge to respond in kind. The humans split into small groups, moving toward the mountains, the lakes, and even the swirling magnetic fields that often interfered with Cerulean sensors. One man walked barefoot into a shallow lake filled with bioluminescent algae, laughing as the glowing plants swirled around his feet. Another climbed jagged rocks with ease, using only his hands and feet, seemingly unbothered by the sharp edges. Every movement defied the Ceruleans' expectations of survival. The humans did not flinch, stumble, or hesitate. The Ceruleans realized something remarkable. These beings had no fear of the impossible. They did not rely on technology alone to survive. They relied on their own ingenuity, adaptability, and courage. While the Ceruleans had created perfect cities, machines, and systems, they had not encountered a species that could confront raw nature itself without hesitation. From a nearby ridge, a small Cerulean scout observed the humans more closely. She noted the way they worked together, sometimes communicating with words, sometimes with gestures, and sometimes with nothing at all. They shared tasks, learned from mistakes, and improvised solutions in real time. One human attempted to cross a jagged chasm using only a fallen tree as a bridge. Another quickly secured a makeshift rope to help her across. The Cerulean scout's multiple eyes widened. She had never seen cooperation so instinctive, so fluid, and so effective. The humans' exploration soon led them to Zyphora's flora. They approached plants considered deadly, some releasing noxious gases or triggering electrical discharges. Yet humans touched them, examined them, and even extracted materials from them with care and precision. They did not seek to conquer or destroy, they sought to understand. The Ceruleans could barely comprehend this approach. For their species, the unfamiliar was to be catalogued, studied from a distance, and sometimes ignored altogether. Humans, however, embraced the unknown. A small Cerulean child, curious and bold, stepped closer to the humans' camp. One of the humans noticed her, crouched down, and extended a hand. The child hesitated, then touched it lightly. There was no fear, no aggression, only a spark of connection. Around the camp, humans shared food and water with one another, demonstrating care not just for themselves but for each other and, in subtle ways, for the planet itself. The Ceruleans watched quietly, realizing that humans were not only strong and adaptable but also deeply social, guided by empathy and mutual support. As the day passed, the Ceruleans began to question their initial assumptions. They had expected diplomats or conquerors. They had expected beings who would respect order and hierarchy, or, at the very least, behave predictably. Humans did none of these things. They were unpredictable, yes, but in ways that were exhilarating rather than dangerous. They laughed at risks, celebrated small victories, and treated each obstacle as a challenge to be solved creatively. By twilight, humans had set up a temporary camp on a plateau overlooking the city. They built shelters using simple but ingenious methods, suspended tents anchored with local vines, reflective panels for light, and devices to filter the alien air for comfort. One human even used a natural mineral to create a glowing lantern that illuminated their camp with soft, warm light. The Ceruleans, observing from a distance, felt a mixture of awe and unease. These beings were like nothing they had ever seen, and yet they were thriving. Late that evening, a human walked alone to the edge of a cliff, looking out at the city below. She held a small device in her hands, recording observations, calculations, and sketches of the alien landscape. Her expression was one of quiet wonder. She was not afraid of the vast unknown before her. She welcomed it. For a long while, she simply watched Zyphora, her silhouette framed by the twin moons rising in the sky. The Ceruleans felt, for the first time in centuries, that the galaxy was bigger, stranger, and more exciting than they had imagined. In the council chamber, the Ceruleans debated what these humans meant for Zyphora. Should they approach them directly? Should they attempt to communicate? Some argued that these humans might bring chaos, disrupting the careful balance of life and technology. Others, however, felt a strange hope, a sense that these beings could teach the Ceruleans something new about the universe and about themselves. Finally, the council agreed to watch and learn for now. The humans had not yet asked for permission, nor had they caused harm. They were explorers, adventurers, and problem solvers, and their presence was impossible to ignore. The Ceruleans realized that they were witnessing something rare, a species that could confront the harshest conditions, adapt, and even flourish without domination, fear, or destruction. As the twin suns set completely, the humans gathered around their small lanterns, sharing stories, laughter, and plans for the days ahead. Their voices carried across the plateau, mingling with the soft winds and the faint hum of Zyphora's energy fields. The Ceruleans watched from the shadows, unable to tear their eyes away. In that moment they understood the truth. These were not ordinary beings. These humans were the Deathworlders of the galaxy, and Zyphora had no idea how profound their arrival would be. Above them, the stars stretched endlessly. Somewhere out there, other humans were traveling through the void, facing dangers and worlds far stranger than Zyphora. And here, on a quiet alien planet, a small group of humans was already changing everything, not through force, but through curiosity, courage, and the simple, unstoppable desire to thrive. The next morning, Zyphora awoke beneath a soft violet haze, the twin suns rising slowly over the jagged horizon. The air was crisp, carrying the subtle scent of minerals and the faint aroma of the alien vegetation that grew everywhere, from tiny spiked bushes to enormous floating trees. The humans moved quickly from their makeshift camp, stretching and checking their equipment. They spoke to one another in lively voices, using gestures and words that seemed chaotic to the Ceruleans, yet full of purpose. From the distance, the Ceruleans watched silently. They had positioned a small observation team atop a nearby ridge. The team consisted of 3 Ceruleans, their translucent forms barely visible against the soft morning light. They were fascinated by the humans' energy. While the Ceruleans had mastered control and precision, these beings acted on instinct, curiosity, and adaptability. Every step the humans took seemed deliberate yet spontaneous, a combination that the Ceruleans found difficult to understand. The humans' first destination that morning was a valley known among the Ceruleans as the Shimmering Basin. The basin was filled with glowing pools of liquid, luminescent and beautiful, but dangerous for any creature not adapted to its chemical balance. The Ceruleans had long avoided the area, labeling it uninhabitable. The humans, however, approached it with excitement. One of them, a tall man with short brown hair, knelt near a glowing pool and dipped a small container into the water. He examined it carefully, turning it over in his hands and murmuring notes to himself. A woman nearby held a strange device that measured temperature, radiation, and other unknown properties. The Ceruleans leaned closer, intrigued. In their world, such an environment would have been a trap, a place to be studied only from a distance. Yet the humans treated it as a laboratory, a playground, and a puzzle all at once. They experimented, observed, and adapted, using simple tools in ways the Ceruleans had never imagined. One of the humans noticed a plant growing on the edge of the pool. Its leaves were thick and translucent, absorbing the glowing liquid like a sponge. She carefully cut a small piece and placed it into a portable container. Another human immediately began constructing a small frame to hold the sample under light and air controls, turning the plant into a temporary research station. The Ceruleans whispered among themselves. These beings could turn the hazardous into the useful, the dangerous into the productive, without fear or hesitation. As the humans continued their exploration, they began to interact with Zyphora's wildlife. Small floating creatures drifted along the air currents, their translucent bodies pulsing with light. The humans observed them closely, noting their behavior and patterns. They did not capture or harm the creatures. Instead, they built small observation tools, allowing the animals to move freely while providing humans a closer understanding of their movements and instincts. A young Cerulean scout, perched on a rock nearby, was captivated by the humans' approach. She had grown up learning that Zyphora's creatures were unpredictable and often dangerous. She had always been careful around them, but the humans handled every interaction with calm patience, paying attention to the creatures, signals, and responding in kind. She noticed the humans communicating quietly with each other, pointing, mimicking, and sometimes laughing as if sharing a joke with the animals themselves. The humans' curiosity soon led them to the mountains surrounding the Shimmering Basin. The peaks were jagged and treacherous, with steep cliffs and sharp rocks. The Ceruleans had long considered these mountains nearly impossible to climb, with only a few specially trained individuals capable of navigating them. Yet the humans approached with confidence. Using ropes, improvised harnesses, and sheer determination, they began to ascend. One human stumbled on a loose rock, but another quickly extended a hand and helped him regain balance. The teamwork was seamless, instinctive, and effective. The humans laughed at the minor mishap, making light of it, and continued their climb. The Ceruleans, observing from afar, realized that these beings possessed not only physical resilience, but also a remarkable sense of collaboration and mutual care. On a narrow ledge halfway up the mountain, a woman paused to examine a cluster of crystals embedded in the rock face. She tapped them lightly, listened to the sound they produced, and sketched diagrams in her notebook. The Ceruleans had cataloged these crystals centuries ago, yet the humans approached them with curiosity rather than caution, imagination rather than fear. They explored patterns, possibilities, and uses the Ceruleans had never considered. While the humans explored, their interactions sparked discussions among the Ceruleans. In the council chamber, the elders debated what the humans' behavior meant. Some argued that humans were reckless, foolish, or primitive. Others insisted that their adaptability and ingenuity were extraordinary, even superior in ways the Ceruleans could not yet measure. "They do not fear the unknown," one elder said softly. "They embrace it, and in that embrace they flourish." Back in the mountains, the humans discovered a narrow canyon hidden behind a waterfall. The water fell in a shimmering curtain, almost blinding in the sunlight. The canyon beyond was dark, damp, and filled with strange formations that the Ceruleans had never explored. The humans paused, studying the entrance. Then, without hesitation, they began to enter, using their tools to measure air quality, map the terrain, and ensure safety. Inside the canyon, they found intricate rock patterns, flowing mineral streams, and small glowing creatures that clung to the walls. The humans worked together to navigate the space, gently moving obstacles and observing the creatures. At one point, a human carefully guided a tiny, luminous animal back to its perch after it had slipped from a rocky ledge. Every action was deliberate, careful, and respectful of the environment. Meanwhile, a group of Ceruleans had followed the humans to the canyon's entrance. They watched in awe as the humans adapted to the low light, the narrow pathways, and the unpredictable terrain. Where a Cerulean might have relied on technology alone to survive, the humans relied on observation, intuition, and creativity. They solved problems that no Cerulean engineer could have anticipated. By mid-afternoon, the humans had mapped a significant portion of the canyon. They had collected samples of minerals, water, and plant life. They had documented the creatures and their behaviors. They had even constructed small, temporary shelters to protect themselves from falling water and unstable rocks. The Ceruleans, observing from a distance, began to understand something profound. Humans did not merely survive. They thrived by learning, experimenting, and adapting in real time. As the day turned to evening, the humans emerged from the canyon, tired but exhilarated. They shared food and water, laughed at minor mistakes, and celebrated discoveries. Their joy was infectious, even reaching the distant Ceruleans who watched silently. There was no fear, no aggression, no desire to dominate, only curiosity, cooperation, and an unstoppable drive to explore. One of the humans, a young man with sandy hair, paused to sketch a detailed diagram of the canyon and its glowing creatures. Another human adjusted a small device that filtered water, turning it into a portable source for their return journey. The Ceruleans whispered among themselves. They had never seen a species so fully attuned to both the physical world and their own ingenuity. As twilight descended, the humans returned to their camp, sharing stories of the day's adventures. They spoke of the canyon, the mountains, the glowing pools, and the creatures they had encountered. Each story was filled with wonder, laughter, and curiosity. They celebrated their successes and reflected on challenges with humor rather than frustration. From the ridge above, the Cerulean scouts watched the humans settle in for the night. They noticed how humans built a small fire, not for warmth alone, but as a gathering point, a place to share knowledge and experience. The Ceruleans marveled at the simple humanity of it: warmth, light, companionship, and joy in the midst of an alien world. In the council chamber, the elders continued their debate. Some argued that the humans' presence would disrupt the balance of Xiphora. Others believed that their arrival might be a gift, a chance to learn, to grow, and to see the universe through eyes unbound by fear. "They do not see limits the way we do," one elder said thoughtfully. "Perhaps it is time we open our minds as wide as theirs." As the night deepened, the humans lay beneath the stars, pointing out constellations and speculating about the worlds beyond Xiphora. They spoke of distant galaxies, strange planets, and the challenges they had faced on other journeys. They laughed at small mistakes and celebrated their successes. Their energy was boundless, their curiosity unending. High above, the twin moons reflected on the glowing pools and shimmering mountains. Xiphora had always been a planet of structure, order, and predictability. But now, with the humans exploring its valleys, mountains, and canyons, it felt alive in a new way. The Ceruleans realized that the humans were not invaders or conquerors. They were explorers, problem-solvers, and creators. They were the Deathworlders, beings who could flourish where others would hesitate. The next day would bring new challenges, new discoveries, and new opportunities for the humans to demonstrate their extraordinary abilities. The Ceruleans could only watch, learn, and prepare to understand a species that was as unpredictable as it was remarkable. And as the humans slept beneath the alien stars, the Ceruleans understood one undeniable truth. The galaxy had grown immeasurably larger, more exciting, and infinitely more unpredictable with the arrival of the Deathworlders. The morning on Xiphora dawned cold and clear, the twin suns rising behind the jagged violet mountains and casting long, shimmering shadows across the shimmering basin. The humans were already awake, moving through their camp with energy that seemed endless. They checked their equipment, spoke quickly in soft voices, and began planning the day's exploration. Today, they intended to venture deeper into a series of jagged canyons that twisted like ribbons through the mountains. These canyons were considered dangerous by the Ceruleans, filled with narrow passages, hidden crevices, and uneven terrain. The Ceruleans observed from their distant ridge, discussing the humans' plans in low, urgent tones. "They do not hesitate," one said. "Even where we would send only scouts, they go themselves. It is impossible to predict what they will do next." Another elder replied, "Perhaps it is not a matter of prediction. Perhaps we have only seen a species that does not recognize fear as we do." The humans approached the canyon with excitement. One of them, a young woman with dark hair pulled back in a braid, knelt beside a small cluster of glowing crystals near the canyon's edge. She examined them carefully, touching the edges, observing the light as it refracted across the surface. Another human, a man with a wide grin and worn boots, noticed a steep drop just ahead. He turned to the group and said, "We'll need to cross it carefully. I think we can use that fallen tree as a bridge, but we'll need ropes." Without hesitation, the humans worked together. They secured ropes to nearby rocks, tested the stability of the tree, and guided each other across the gap. Where one person faltered, another extended a helping hand. Their cooperation was seamless, instinctive, and careful. The Ceruleans, watching from above, were silent in awe. They had never seen teamwork so natural, so precise, and so effective. Deeper into the canyon, the terrain became more challenging. Narrow paths twisted around towering rock walls, and small streams of luminescent water cut across the pathways. The humans stopped frequently to study their surroundings. One of them sketched patterns on a notebook, while another collected mineral samples. They did not rush. Each step was measured, each action purposeful, yet carried with a sense of wonder rather than caution. A Cerulean scout had followed them closer this time, moving silently along a hidden ridge. She observed the humans' interactions with the environment. One man carefully redirected a small stream to avoid eroding the path. A woman noticed a delicate plant leaning over the edge of a cliff and gently supported it while documenting its structure. Every action was deliberate, every movement thoughtful. The scout whispered to herself, "They are not afraid to touch the world. They do not destroy, they create, they adapt, they respect." As the humans progressed, the canyon opened into a wide chamber. The walls were covered in strange, glowing markings that pulsed faintly in the dim light. The Ceruleans had long known of this chamber, but it had remained unexplored. The markings were considered too complex and unstable for study, and the chamber itself had been labeled off-limits due to its unpredictable conditions. The humans, however, entered with curiosity, not caution. They examined the markings closely, tracing their patterns with fingers, sketching diagrams, and discussing observations in low, animated voices. One man held a device that emitted soft light, illuminating the walls without disturbing the fragile structure. Another woman carefully mapped the chamber, noting air currents, temperature changes, and the subtle vibrations beneath their feet. The Ceruleans watched in amazement. Where their species relied on careful, controlled experimentation, the humans combined intuition, observation, and improvisation. They were solving problems that had baffled generations of Ceruleans, and they were doing it with laughter, discussion, and curiosity. As they explored, they encountered a narrow passage blocked by a fallen boulder. The boulder was too heavy to move directly, and the walls were too steep to climb around. The humans paused, observing it for a moment. Then, without hesitation, they began to work together to create a solution. They rigged a series of levers and pulleys using nearby rocks and vines. One human tested the arrangement carefully, while another adjusted the tension. Slowly, steadily, they shifted the boulder just enough to create a small path, allowing them to continue. The Ceruleans were astonished. They had never seen a species solve physical problems with such speed, creativity, and teamwork. Where a Cerulean engineer might have spent days or weeks designing a solution, the humans achieved it in hours, relying on intelligence, adaptability, and cooperation rather than pure technology. As the humans advanced, they began to notice a faint humming sound echoing through the chamber. It seemed to resonate with the walls, the minerals, and even the water running through small cracks. One of the humans, a young woman with keen eyes, realized that the sound followed a pattern. She motioned for the others to be quiet and listened carefully. Slowly, she traced the vibrations, identifying a subtle rhythm that indicated the presence of a natural energy flow beneath the canyon floor. The humans were excited. They worked together to map the energy flow, using simple tools to measure frequency, intensity, and direction. The Ceruleans, observing from a safe distance, were amazed. Humans had discovered something the Ceruleans had overlooked for centuries, not because it was invisible, but because it required a combination of intuition, curiosity, and courage that few species possessed. By afternoon, the humans had explored much of the canyon chamber. They had mapped its passages, documented its creatures, and discovered its hidden energy flows. They shared findings, laughed at mistakes, and celebrated small victories. There was no competition, no prideful display of power, only collaboration, discovery, and joy in learning. The Ceruleans returned to the council chamber to discuss what they had witnessed. "They do not fear what we fear," one elder said. "They are not limited by our rules or our methods. They see the world differently, and in that difference they thrive." Another elder nodded. "It is not just bravery," she said. "It is intelligence combined with adaptability, creativity, and care. These humans, they are extraordinary." As the day drew to a close, the humans prepared to return to their camp. On the way out, they encountered a small cluster of alien creatures that clung to the canyon walls. One human carefully guided a tiny creature back to a safe ledge after it had slipped from its perch. Another sketched its unique anatomy in a notebook, noting its behavior and movements. The humans' respect for life, their curiosity, and their creativity shone in every interaction. At their camp, the humans gathered around a simple lantern. They shared meals, discussed observations, and planned their next exploration. One human pointed to the stars, speculating about distant worlds and civilizations. Another spoke of previous journeys to harsh planets, recalling challenges and discoveries. Every story was filled with laughter, insight, and reflection. Above them, the twin moons of Xiphora reflected light onto the mountains and canyon, casting shadows that shifted with the gentle wind. The Ceruleans observed from afar, marveling at the humans' energy, intelligence, and ingenuity. They had not yet communicated directly with the humans, but they understood one undeniable truth. These beings were unlike any the Ceruleans had encountered. They were not conquerors or invaders. They were explorers, problem-solvers, and creators, capable of thriving in environments that had long been considered impossible. Late that night, the humans lay beneath the stars, sharing stories and dreams. They spoke of the challenges they had faced and the wonders they had discovered, celebrating not only their successes but the beauty of the unknown. The Ceruleans, watching silently, realized that the humans' presence on Xiphora was changing the planet itself. It was not merely their actions, but their energy, curiosity, and approach to life that left an impression on everything they touched. The next morning, the humans were already preparing for new challenges. They spoke eagerly of a nearby plateau filled with unique rock formations and rare plants. They discussed how they might navigate it, study it, and learn from it. The Ceruleans, observing from their ridge, knew that each day would bring new surprises, discoveries, and lessons. Humans did not merely survive the unknown. They thrived in it, and in doing so, they inspired the Ceruleans to see their world in a new light. And so, as the twin suns rose again over Xiphora, the humans ventured forth with unshakable curiosity, courage, and ingenuity. The Ceruleans, silently watching, understood that they were witnessing a rare and extraordinary event. A species that could not only survive in the harshest conditions, but transform them into opportunities for discovery, cooperation, and creativity. The Deathworlders had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. The morning sun rose slowly over Xiphora, painting the jagged violet mountains with golden light. The humans were awake before dawn, already packing their tools, notebooks, and devices for another day of exploration. Today, they planned to approach the Cerulean city itself, not to invade or disturb, but to learn from it and perhaps to show the Ceruleans that they came in peace. They moved with the same quiet confidence and energy that had defined their arrival, curious, alert, and ready for anything. From the observation ridge, the Ceruleans watched the humans with a mix of awe and apprehension. The council had debated long into the night, wondering whether to make direct contact. Some elders feared the humans would disrupt the delicate balance of Zyphora, while others believed that their presence might be the start of a rare opportunity, the chance to learn from a species unlike any other. After careful discussion, the council decided to allow a cautious approach, sending a small group of Ceruleans to observe at closer range. The humans approached the city with care. They did not rush or force their way in. They walked respectfully along the outskirts, observing the Ceruleans' architecture, energy fields, and transportation systems. One of the humans, a young woman with a keen eye, sketched the elegant curves and glowing panels of the city walls, noting how energy flowed through the structures. Another adjusted a small device that could measure the flow of power in the Cerulean grids, fascinated by the balance of efficiency and elegance. The Ceruleans watched silently from above. They were impressed by the humans' ability to observe and understand complex systems without needing instructions. Unlike their own species, which relied heavily on protocol and hierarchy, the humans approached learning through curiosity, intuition, and collaboration. They questioned everything with respect, experimented with patience, and adapted quickly to new information. As the humans explored the outskirts of the city, they encountered a large, floating Cerulean transport platform. Its surface was smooth, and the control panels glowed softly with a blue light. The humans studied it closely, pointing out symbols, energy conduits, and movement patterns. One of them, a young man with sandy hair, crouched and examined the platform's mechanisms. He tapped lightly on a panel, causing a soft hum to resonate through the device. Another human leaned over and began sketching diagrams, trying to understand how it functioned without touching anything invasive. The Ceruleans were amazed. No being other than a Cerulean had ever approached their technology with such careful curiosity. Humans did not try to override systems or claim mastery through force. They learned through observation, improvisation, and creativity. The Ceruleans had long prided themselves on intelligence and precision, yet here was a species that approached complex problems in ways that were both different and profoundly effective. A Cerulean scout moved closer to the humans, keeping her distance but observing every action. She noted how they communicated with each other, not through thought transmissions, as the Ceruleans did, but through words, gestures, and shared attention. Each human seemed attuned to the others' actions and intentions, anticipating needs, offering help without prompting, and sharing discoveries freely. It was a kind of intelligence that combined observation, empathy, and adaptability. The humans soon found a small waterway flowing near the city's edge. The water was clear but filled with mineral deposits that could clog their equipment. Instead of ignoring it, the humans began to experiment. One of them built a simple filter from local materials, while another designed a small device to measure mineral content. Together, they created a portable system that could provide clean water for their journey and future exploration. The Ceruleans whispered among themselves. They had long relied on advanced machines to solve such problems, yet the humans had accomplished it with only their tools, intuition, and cooperation. It was not just ingenuity. They were witnessing creativity in action, a combination of knowledge, observation, and quick problem-solving. Encouraged by their success, the humans decided to approach the city more directly. They moved toward a small plaza, careful to avoid disrupting the flow of Cerulean activity. The aliens paused in surprise at the humans' calm presence. Unlike previous visitors from other species, the humans did not demand attention or status. They walked with confidence but humility, observing and learning rather than asserting dominance. A Cerulean approached cautiously, a tall figure with wings that shimmered in the sunlight. The human greeted them with a smile, raising a hand in a simple gesture of peace. The Cerulean hesitated, then returned the gesture, curious. Another human spoke softly in a polite tone, using gestures to communicate that they came with respect and goodwill. The Ceruleans, long unused to non-hostile first contact, felt an unfamiliar warmth. The humans began to ask questions, pointing to structures, panels, and devices. They listened attentively to explanations, nodding, sketching, and occasionally experimenting with small tasks under careful observation. They were learning not only about the technology but about the philosophy behind it, the balance, the flow, and the connection between the city and its environment. The Ceruleans were astonished by their approach. Where other species might have taken knowledge by force, humans gained it through observation, collaboration, and experimentation. Their intelligence was not only in understanding, but in applying what they learned creatively, respecting the world around them. As the day progressed, the humans were invited into a larger chamber within the city, a place of learning and experimentation for the Ceruleans. Here, they encountered devices and energy systems far more complex than anything they had seen before. The humans studied, sketched, and tested small hypotheses carefully. One created a simple mechanism to enhance airflow within a chamber, while another adjusted a light reflector to increase efficiency without damaging the system. The Ceruleans observed closely. They realized that the humans' ingenuity was not accidental. It was rooted in adaptability, curiosity, empathy, and collaboration. They were not only problem solvers, but also respectful creators, capable of understanding and improving systems without fear or destruction. Later, the humans were invited to see the city's central energy core. It pulsed with light and flowed with energy through conduits and panels, maintaining the city's functions. The humans studied it, noting patterns, drawing diagrams, and asking careful questions. One of them suggested a small adjustment to improve efficiency, not to claim control, but to experiment and learn. The Ceruleans watched as the adjustment worked seamlessly, improving energy flow and reducing waste. There was quiet admiration among the council members. They had seen brilliance, yes, but this combination of intelligence, creativity, collaboration, and respect for life was unprecedented. The humans were extraordinary. By evening, the humans were guided to a high terrace overlooking the city. They marveled at the intricate structures, the glowing panels, and the movement of the Ceruleans. They asked questions about architecture, energy distribution, and environmental adaptation. Their questions were not intrusive. They were thoughtful, respectful, and aimed at understanding. The Ceruleans began to converse openly, explaining principles, systems, and philosophies. The humans listened, sketched, experimented lightly, and asked more questions. Each interaction built trust, each observation deepened understanding, and each experiment revealed new possibilities. The humans' energy and curiosity were infectious. Ceruleans began to see their world differently, noticing patterns, efficiencies, and connections they had overlooked. Where once the city had seemed static and perfect, it now seemed alive with potential, dynamic, and full of opportunity. At night, the humans gathered in their camp outside the city, sharing meals and stories. They laughed at minor errors, reflected on discoveries, and made plans for the next day. Their approach to life was simple yet profound. Learn, adapt, share, and respect the world and each other. From a distant ridge, the Ceruleans observed quietly. They realized something remarkable. Humans did not only survive harsh environments, they improved the world around them simply by being present. They were catalysts for growth, discovery, and cooperation. As the twin moons of Xiphora rose, reflecting light over the city and mountains, the Ceruleans understood that humans were not just explorers. They were extraordinary beings capable of inspiring change without force, threat, or demand. Their presence was not a challenge to be met, but an opportunity to learn, grow, and see the universe in a new light. And as the humans slept beneath the alien stars, dreaming of distant worlds and new discoveries, the Ceruleans felt a quiet sense of hope. The Deathworlders of the galaxy had arrived, not to conquer, but to thrive, create, and inspire. Xiphora would never be the same, and the Ceruleans knew that this was only the beginning of a remarkable journey. The morning on Xiphora was cool and crisp, the twin suns climbing slowly over the jagged mountains and bathing the shimmering basin in soft light. The humans were already awake, preparing for the most ambitious exploration yet. The Dead Valleys, a remote region known for its harsh terrain, unpredictable weather, and hidden dangers. Even the most experienced Ceruleans had avoided these valleys for generations. The humans, however, approached it with the same energy, curiosity, and determination that had carried them through the canyons, mountains, and city. The Ceruleans watched from a high ridge, discussing the humans' plans in awe. "They do not see danger as we do," one elder whispered. "Where we see limits, they see opportunities. Where we fear, they hope. It is as if they were made for worlds like this." Another elder nodded. "Perhaps it is not their bodies alone, but their minds, their hearts, their way of thinking. They transform every environment they touch." The humans moved as a team, sharing tasks and guiding each other with precision and care. One carried tools and devices for measuring soil, water, and air. Another collected samples of strange plants that seemed almost impossible to touch without harm. Others mapped the terrain, sketched diagrams, and documented observations in notebooks that would later serve as a record of their discoveries. The dead valleys were unlike anything they had faced before. Jagged rocks jutted from the ground like teeth, shallow rivers cut through the landscape unpredictably, and strong winds swept across the plains without warning. Most species would have retreated, finding the area impossible to traverse. The humans, however, treated it as a challenge. They studied the terrain, discussed strategies, and adapted quickly when obstacles arose. A narrow gorge blocked their path, with water rushing rapidly through it. One of the humans, a tall man with short brown hair, examined the width and depth carefully. "We can cross," he said confidently, "if we use the fallen logs over there as a bridge and reinforce them with vines." Another human, a woman with keen eyes, nodded and began tying vines in a secure pattern, testing each knot with care. Together, the team crossed the gorge safely, using ingenuity, patience, and trust. The Ceruleans watched in astonishment. They had built bridges and vehicles to cross similar terrains, but the humans relied on observation, teamwork, and creativity alone. Every movement was deliberate, every decision guided by intelligence and empathy. The aliens began to realize that humans had a unique combination of physical ability, mental flexibility, and social cooperation that made them capable of thriving in the most hostile environments. Further into the dead valleys, the humans discovered a series of caves hidden behind a curtain of rock and mineral formations. Inside, they found glowing crystals, strange mineral deposits, and small ecosystems of plants and creatures that had adapted to the harsh conditions. The humans explored carefully, noting patterns, documenting growth cycles, and examining interactions between plants and animals. They did not disturb the delicate balance. Instead, they observed, learned, and found ways to interact without causing harm. At one point, a human noticed that one of the glowing crystals emitted a subtle vibration. Curious, she tapped it lightly and observed how the energy moved through the surrounding rocks. Another human quickly took measurements, sketching diagrams and testing hypotheses. Together, they discovered a natural energy flow that could be harnessed without damaging the environment. The Ceruleans, observing from a distance, were stunned. Humans had discovered something even they had overlooked, not through machines or formal methods, but through curiosity, intuition, and careful experimentation. As the day progressed, the humans faced more challenges. Strong winds blew sand across jagged ridges, sudden shifts in terrain threatened to block their path, and narrow passages demanded careful balance. Yet they adapted. They used ropes, makeshift supports, and clever strategies to navigate obstacles. When one human slipped slightly on a steep incline, another reached out, helping without hesitation. Laughter and encouragement flowed freely, keeping morale high even in difficult conditions. The Ceruleans, now observing openly from several vantage points, began to take notes themselves. They realized that humans' approach to the dead valleys was not only effective but transformative. Where Ceruleans would have relied on machines, protective fields, or isolation, humans relied on their minds, bodies, and the cooperative spirit they carried with them. They turned challenges into opportunities, dangers into learning experiences, and the harshest environments into places of discovery. In the late afternoon, the humans reached a plateau overlooking a vast section of the dead valleys. From this vantage point, they could see hidden rivers, strange rock formations, and a network of caves that had never been mapped. They paused to rest, sharing water and observations, discussing what they had seen and planning the next steps. One human carefully sketched the entire panorama, noting possible paths, hazards, and points of interest. Another experimented with a simple device to measure airflow and energy in the area, collecting data that would help them understand the unique environment better. The Ceruleans observed in silence, realizing that humans' abilities extended far beyond survival. They adapted, solved problems creatively, and uncovered knowledge that had remained hidden for centuries. The aliens began to understand why the species had been called Deathworlders. Humans thrived where others could not, using intelligence, courage, and collaboration as tools as powerful as any machine. As evening approached, the humans set up a small camp on the plateau. They arranged portable shelters carefully, ensuring minimal impact on the environment. They collected food and water from the surroundings, processed it with simple devices, and shared it among themselves. One human worked on a small experiment, using energy patterns from the glowing crystals to power a light source. Another documented the process in detail, noting the efficiency and potential applications. The Ceruleans, now closer than ever before, could not hide their admiration. They began to approach the humans cautiously, curious to learn and perhaps to interact. The humans noticed them immediately, waving and smiling in greeting. There was no fear, no confusion, only a willingness to share, observe, and learn together. A Cerulean stepped forward, offering a gesture of friendship. One of the humans returned it, extending a hand and speaking softly, using gestures to bridge the gap between species. Soon, other humans and Ceruleans joined in, communicating through words, gestures, and shared attention. They began to exchange knowledge, humans demonstrating improvisation and adaptation, Ceruleans sharing principles of energy, architecture, and technology. Each learned from the other, building trust and understanding. Over the next hours, humans and Ceruleans worked together in the dead valleys. They built simple observation platforms, mapped hidden passages, and measured energy flows. Humans suggested creative methods to stabilize pathways, improve observation efficiency, and interact with wildlife safely. Ceruleans offered insights on materials, energy manipulation, and structural design. Together, they achieved results that neither species could have accomplished alone. As night fell, the group gathered on the plateau. The stars above Xiphora stretched endlessly, reflecting in the glowing pools below. Humans shared stories of other worlds, their adventures and discoveries. Ceruleans shared their history, philosophy, and knowledge of the galaxy. Each learned from the other, gaining insight, respect, and inspiration. The humans' presence had already begun to change Xiphora. Plants and creatures that had been avoided or misunderstood were now observed, studied, and cared for. Hidden energy flows were mapped and understood. Dangerous terrain had been transformed into navigable pathways. The Ceruleans realized that humans did not conquer or dominate. They improved, enhanced, and understood. One human, standing at the edge of the plateau, gazed out at the vast valleys and whispered softly, more to herself than anyone else, "There's so much to learn, so much to see. And we can do it together." Nearby, a Cerulean observed her words and nodded. In that moment, the aliens understood something profound. Humans' strength was not in weapons, dominance, or control. It was in curiosity, courage, ingenuity, and the ability to collaborate. By dawn, the combined group had mapped the entire region, documented its flora and fauna, and built temporary shelters for future expeditions. Humans had proposed methods to monitor the valleys without disturbing them, combining observation with minimal intervention. Ceruleans had adapted these ideas into long-term strategies, inspired by the humans' approach. The Council of Xiphora convened soon after. They spoke of the humans with reverence and wonder. "They do not merely survive," one elder said. "They adapt, learn, and inspire. They have changed our understanding of this world in ways we could not imagine." Another added, "Their creativity, collaboration, and respect for life are unlike anything we have seen. We must learn from them and perhaps follow their example." The humans, meanwhile, prepared to leave the dead valleys and return to their camp outside the city. They shared their findings with the Ceruleans, explaining patterns, observations, and ideas. They expressed gratitude for the opportunity to explore, learn, and collaborate. The Ceruleans, in turn, expressed awe and admiration, recognizing that the humans had demonstrated something extraordinary: the power of curiosity, ingenuity, and cooperation to thrive in the most challenging environments. As the twin suns set over Xiphora, casting long shadows over the mountains and valleys, the humans rested beneath the stars. They spoke softly of future journeys, new discoveries, and the endless possibilities of the galaxy. The Ceruleans watched silently, understanding that the arrival of these beings had forever changed their world. The humans' presence had proven that life could flourish in environments once thought impossible. It had shown the Ceruleans that intelligence, courage, creativity, and cooperation could overcome obstacles without force, fear, or domination. The Deathworlders had arrived, and in doing so they had transformed Zyphora, leaving a legacy of knowledge, collaboration, and inspiration that would endure for generations. Above, the stars of the galaxy shone brightly, vast and endless. Somewhere out there, other worlds awaited, challenges untold and mysteries uncharted. The humans would travel onward, exploring, learning, and thriving wherever they went. And Zyphora, forever changed, would always remember the day the Deathworlders arrived, beings who taught a planet that strength was not in power, but in curiosity, ingenuity, and the courage to explore the unknown. The night deepened, and the humans slept peacefully beneath the alien sky, dreams filled with distant stars, new worlds, and endless possibilities. The Ceruleans, too, rested, minds alive with wonder, inspired to look at their world and the galaxy through the eyes of these remarkable visitors. In that quiet, glowing silence, a new chapter of interstellar understanding had begun, one that would stretch far beyond Zyphora, across the stars, and into the hearts and minds of civilizations yet to come.